Welcome to Dark Ozarks. This is a special episode of the Dark Ozarks podcast. We are sitting down and talking with researcher and author Jason Offutt, who has an extensive background writing on the paranormal as well as fiction in humor, sci-fi, fantasy, and horror.
And we do, of course, encourage you to always check out Always Buying Books in Joplin, Missouri, in person and online on Facebook and at the website alwaysbuyingbooks.com for all of your reading needs, including a large section on the paranormal history and more. Not to mention, the building is haunted, and tell Bob and Elise we sent you. And additionally, we want to thank you. Can we start over?
That's what editing's for.
Yeah, I know. Here we go. I'm not used to reading your part. We also want to thank Beard Engine Brewing Company in Alba, Missouri. Beard Engine Brewing is the only English style brewery in Missouri and has been twice named Missouri's best brewery by the Missouri Brewers Association. Great beer and great food in a historical building with an aura past. And yes, their building is also haunted. Tell Nate and Tiff that we sent you. Jason, welcome.
You know, a haunted bookstore, a haunted brewery. I need to get down there.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. That sounds great.
Hopefully all three of us at the same time. That's just my hope. And
we need to plan that sometime.
It is exciting. I'm looking forward to this interview. And Lisa, do you want to kick this thing off or me?
I can a little bit. Jason, I've known Jason for a number of years, and we have been on a number of shows together, podcasts, etc. And Jason, one thing I find very interesting, all three of us kind of a similar background here, is that we all have done paranormal research, have written books, have a background with journalism and academia as well. So what got you writing horror and paranormal? Let's just start there.
Well, they both start when I was really young. The writing part, I remember, I think I was 10 and I read the Adventures of Tom Sawyer. I'm like, this is awesome. I want to do this. I want to write something. I want to write something fun like this. And of course, I told my parents I wanted to be an author when I grew up, and they, rubbed my hair and said, "Oh yeah, go get them." And of course, they laughed. But yeah, and they both died before I actually got stuff published. That's awful. But anyway, so with writing, I'd always wanted to. I always loved telling stories. I loved to make stories up. But when it comes to the paranormal, I've been interested as long as I can remember. I was always fascinated with Saturdays growing up because we had a TV station, an independent station out of Kansas City that would show old monster and science fiction movies all day. And I would be glued to that if I didn't have a baseball game to play. And I just loved it. And I also happened to see a ghost in my house when I was about 8 years old. And I walked out of my bedroom into the hallway right across from my bedroom door. And because that's where we kept our bookshelves, and I was probably, knowing me, I was getting the D volume of the World Book Encyclopedia to look at dinosaurs. I'm pretty sure that was one of the only books I looked at. There was a little boy standing there, and he had brown hair parted on one side, and he was wearing a blue flannel shirt, and I could see a bookshelf through him. And we stared at each other. It's probably 5 seconds at most, but it seemed like forever. And then until he blinked at me, and that broke my shock. And I turned around and walked into my bedroom and shut the door. And I didn't talk to anybody about it for at least 30 years. But from that moment, I knew, because I saw with my own eyes something that shouldn't be. And I knew that there were things out there that we just haven't discovered yet, that we just haven't put a scientific stamp on. So I wanted to know more. And eventually, when I got old enough, I started asking questions.
Well, I think that's kind of the path a lot of us take getting here. And of course, we got to know each other back when you were writing more nonfiction on the paranormal, and based mainly in Missouri and the Ozarks.
I think it was Haunted Missouri is when I met you, and that's
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that was published in 2007. So yeah, we've known
Yeah.
each other for quite a while.
Yeah. And what do you, here's a good question. You're from Missouri, and how do you, what are your thoughts on how haunted this part of the country is versus other places?
I don't think there's any verses at all. I somebody in one of my very first interviews, somebody asked me what I thought was the most haunted city in the country. And I'm like, New York is the most populated. So it's probably had the most people die. So maybe that's the most. But at one point I was writing a paranormal column, and I noticed that there were a whole lot of hauntings and a demon possession and a a guy who tried to invent a time machine and a UFO incident, all fairly close to where I lived. And I put a pin in a map and drew a circle, 100-mile radius, and I investigated as much as I could within that 100-mile radius, and I found more than enough to fill a book. It's called What Lurks Beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And that made me realize, you know what? It's every place is haunted. Every place has demonic slash jinn slash just any evil activity. UFOs are seen everywhere. Bigfoot is seen everywhere, actually literally everywhere. Bigfoot's been reported in 49 of 50 states. The only state it hasn't been reported in is Hawaii. And so everywhere is just as haunted and paranormal as everywhere else. We just got to get out there and look for it.
I like that. Maybe it is a matter of just turning over the stones to find the stories.
Right.
Josh, you want to jump in?
So and Jason, I'm going to repeat my question since we're actually on the podcast. We jumped in early. But in one of your recent books, The Girl in the Corn, interviews and regarding the book itself and your preparation for the book included that you said that you had interviewed individuals who had relationships with people who claimed to be fae. Could you please tell me about that?
Right. Well, The Girl in the Corn is a horror novel that won recently, as a matter of fact, the Independent Book Publishers Association's Gold Ben Franklin Award for the Best Horror Novel of 2022, which I'm proud of. Wish I had. Yeah, thank you. I wish I had the award in front of me, but it's in my office sitting on my desk for people to walk in and see it. But I got the initial idea from my daughter a couple of years ago. Was watching a Disney movie. She was watching one of the mini Tinkerbell movies, which is about fairies. And I'm watching, I'm going, you know what? Fairies aren't like that. Because I've researched fairies before. The lore of little people across the world is common, and it's pretty much all the same. They are diminutive people who can be big if they want to, or really small if they want to. They're mischievous, or they're deadly, and you better not cross them. I had interviewed for my newspaper column about Beyond the From the Shadows. I'd interviewed a man years ago who claimed to have had a romantic relationship with a woman who said she was part fae. Her mother was human and her father was fae. and the relationship, he was more than convinced was right. That that she was right about her Fae, background, because the love he fell into was immediate and hard and stronger than anything he'd ever felt. And the first part of their relationship was stronger than anything he had ever felt. And there were times to where she was equally as seemingly strongly in love with him as he was with her, and other times she didn't seem to care.
Hmm.
She had a job which apparently a lot of people who are Fae who are living around us have, which are which are jobs that are late at night, so they don't have to interact with a lot of people. She delivered newspapers at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he ended up riding with her one night, and they ran out of gas. And she said, "This is no problem." And the car started back up, and she finished her route before going to the gas station and getting more gas. Um, when they went home, he found out that she was married, and her husband was there, and that she introduced him. And before they went back into the bedroom and fooled around, and her husband didn't seem to care. Well, the relationship carried on for a little bit, not very long, and finally she broke it off with him, and the last night that he spent with her, he was driving home, and a dark entity appeared in his vehicle, and he felt oppressed by this. He just an overwhelming feeling of despair was on him, and when he got home, it followed him in, and he called her, and she said, I can't talk to you anymore. And he described what happened, and she goes, it won't bother you again, just leave me alone or it will. And then it disappeared, and he didn't have any more contact with her. But anyway, that I used that knowledge and the knowledge of other things that I'd researched, to play off of the fact that Tinkerbell's um, not not a nice thing to write my novel. I wanted to have a fairy as the bad guy.
I love that. I love
I
that.
do too.
Jumping over to, and I just love to be able to put these three words together. So thank you, Jason. Matriarchal Nazi
Nazi
cannibals.
cannibals. Yeah, that was I absolutely love that novella because it came to me in the middle of the night. I was dreaming. I dreamt the whole novella, and I woke up and I told my wife about it, and she said, "You better write this down." So I did, and it was 27,000 words worth, and yeah, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Yeah,
And I
it's
have to say, it's one of my favorite things that you've written.
yeah.
I still love it.
I
It's
appreciate
very well
that.
done.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's Nazis, a bunch of women who escaped from Nazi Germany and moved to Missouri, and ended up eating people. So yeah, that's a lot of fun.
What I want to get your definition, Jason. Your definition of good horror writing versus everything else.
Oh my gosh, good horror. Well, let me just start with good writing. I want to care about the characters, one way or another. I either want to love them or I want them to die. One of the two. I just want to care in some way. And I also want it to feel real. Somebody posted on Twitter today. She asked what was more important, writing what you know or using your imagination, and I said they both are. Since I write humor humor, I write horror. Well, I do write humor. I write horror and science fiction. Man, I can't write what I know, but I use the write what I know to make it real, to ground it in reality. Because if horror is not grounded, or science fiction isn't grounded in reality, if people don't have their personal everyday problems, if gravity doesn't work right, if they're not scared when the monster pops out, that's a problem. So good humor or good horror is grounded in reality enough to where you feel for the person. Stephen King does this better than anybody, because he paints a believable picture of a normal world and then lets the monsters out. So that's what makes good horror writing, I think.
Love that. Lisa?
Um, I want to. You mentioned about writing humor. I think it's interesting because you write so many different types of fiction as well as nonfiction. What do you think is the hardest thing to write?
Oh, humor by far. Um, and it not necessarily. I mean, I've been doing it for long enough. It's pretty easy now, but I, I teach at a university. You know that. I don't know if the
Mhm.
audience does, but I teach. A lot of my classes are writing classes, and one of them I teach is an opinion writing class, and my section on humor writing is the hardest for everybody involved, because what is funny? I mean, it's all subjective. Um,
Mhm.
in order to make something funny for everybody, man, that's hard work. So I don't think it's hard to scare people. I don't think it's hard to make people cry. Um, but to make somebody laugh, yeah, that's the most difficult.
That's fair.
Jumping over to the Midwest, Jason, what's your definition of Midwest culture, and has it affected your writing?
Oh yeah, well, it's completely it molded my writing, because yeah, I grew up in the Midwest. I still live in the Midwest. I say "ope." I didn't realize that until recently, but I say "ope" a lot. I'm polite to people. I say hi, I wave, I do the farmer thing. I'm driving down the street. I wave at people. Um, yeah, I based my novels in the Midwest, Missouri specifically, a little bit in Kansas and Oklahoma and Iowa, but um, I just it's comfortable here. I think people are really nice, and I want to explore their niceness again when the monsters come out, to see how they'll react. But it gives a feeling of fellowship when it comes to neighbors, and even people that you don't know. So I think that's how it's affected my writing.
Lisa?
Um, what do you you mentioned this earlier, it made me think of it. Um, you wrote a book about time travel,
Hmm.
or time machine, and you've told me this story a number of times that you've met someone who said he created a time machine. Was that the inspiration for the book?
No, no,
No.
no, because I've been interested. The first TV show after Scooby Doo, the first TV show that I gleaned onto was the original Star Trek. A
Mhm.
TV station growing up in my area played reruns every single day, 7 days a week, and I didn't miss one of them. My favorite episodes were all the time travel episodes, and I remember one Saturday afternoon uh watching TV, and H.G. Wells' Time Machine from, I think it was 1960, I think is when it came on, and I'm like, what is going on here? This is awesome. So I just time travel, and I've read a lot of books on time travel, and not just science fiction, but scientific books on time travel, and it fascinates me, always has, because it's not impossible. Science says it can really happen. So I just wanted to write a book on time travel, and there it happened. Yeah.
There you go.
And Jason, you were on Coast to Coast AM. Tell me about that, please.
All right. Well, I was on 3 different times. The only problem I have with it is, man, from midnight till 4 a.m, I am hell for work the next day. Oh my God, that's awful. But my only regret is not being interviewed by Art Bell.
Mhm.
I was interviewed by Ian Punnett, who was great. I liked Ian, and George Norrie twice, which was good as well. It was interesting in the fact that the audience was so big. I mean, the show's on more than 500 radio stations across North America. You know, I mean, what? Really? That many people are listening to me. Um, I also got kind of a taste on what it's like to do something that big. Uh, I mean, in order to, and I've had this happen on a few different shows, like the X Zone Radio from Canada, which is
Mhm.
basically their coast to coast. It's kind of the same thing. The host does almost every show, and doesn't have time to read all the books. So I had to forward my own questions, which is kind of
Mhm.
weird, but I realize kind of why that's necessary. I just think um, I just think that the size of the audience was really cool, and the fact that I cuss a lot and I couldn't.
You had to watch yourself.
Yeah, I did. I mean, even when I'm teaching, I'll drop a word here and there, but no, not on this. I didn't want to be banned from a forum that big.
That's fair. That's fair. Question I have is, being Dark Ozarks, what do you think is the most noir story out of the Ozarks that you're aware of?
Oh my gosh. Oof. Um, oh my God. Okay, so give me a second to remember
Okay.
his name. His first name is Billy.
Cook.
Uh, Billy Mad Dog Cook.
Yep.
That guy. That guy. Who the movie from the early 1950s, The Hitchhiker, was based off of, starring one of the Little Rascals. He played
Yeah.
Beretta on TV in the 70s. What's his name?
Oh yeah.
I
I
can
can't think of
see
his.
him.
And then also starred the
He was a
fellow.
priest in some TV show.
Yeah, and then he also starred the fellow that was the prosecutor
Robert
in Perry
Blake.
Mason. Yeah, Robert Blake.
Robert Blake. I think he also starred in the movie In Cold Blood. I
I
think
think
he was
so.
in that too. Anyway, so yeah, Billy Mad Dog Cook. Um, I think because he was a serial killer,
Hmm.
and he was from Joplin, had a
Hmm.
horrible life growing up, and decided, I guess, to take it out on other people. He hitchhiked and kidnapped an entire family who were just out on vacation. Husband,
Hmm.
wife, a couple of kids, and a dog. He had them
Hmm.
drive him all over through Oklahoma and New Mexico and Arizona and down into Mexico. He ended up killing everybody, including the dog,
Hmm.
including a sheriff's deputy, dumping the family, not the deputy, but the family and the dog's body, all the way back in Joplin, in a coal mine.
Lead
And
mine, actually.
it was a
Yeah.
lead mine. Okay.
Yeah.
In a mine. Let
Hmm.
me see. Let me backtrack. So he, yeah, and when he was finally captured, I believe it was in Oklahoma, and brought back his body. He was
Mexico.
dead. It was in
Mexico, but
Mexico.
tried in Oklahoma.
Okay,
Yeah,
tried in
tried in.
Oklahoma, and
Uh-huh.
put to death. And when he was brought back, he was brought back at night
Hmm.
because uh, the people, the authorities were going to bury him, and they didn't want anybody to know where he was buried, and they
Hmm.
buried him in Peace Church No, they buried him at Peace Church Cemetery, which is north of Joplin,
Mhm.
outside the cemetery, and there's no marker, but people will report seeing a black shadow
Yeah.
walking around the cemetery and on neighboring roads. So I think that's a pretty cool and highly localized story.
I think that's fair. It's kind of hard to get more noir than Billy.
Yeah.
That it is. Jason, what is your favorite zombie work in pop culture, either book or film?
Oh man, I'm gonna have to break it into two. The first one being man, Night of the Living Dead. I teach a class on film study that's specifically horror and science fiction. And I show that one because that relates so much to racism and the Cold War, and there's so much cultural influence in that. And it, of course, being the very first modern zombie film. And I don't know if you knew this, but Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, went to the premiere, the opening night premiere, because George Romero had been a cameraman on his show. So that's a fun bit of trivia. But I think that's my favorite just because of the cultural significance. But man, I love Shaun of the Dead. That to me is a perfect zombie movie because it is a tribute to all these other zombie movies, including Night of the Living Dead, and it's just damn funny.
It is.
And I taught a travel writing class in London a number of years ago, and one of the places that I went to was the Winchester, which is an apartment building. So I was highly disappointed. I wanted to go in for a pint. I guess I could have knocked on somebody's door and asked for a beer, but I didn't.
You weren't bold enough, huh?
Yeah, I guess not. No, it's not in a good neighborhood.
Oh, don't want to be a victim in the movie.
Yeah.
Lisa?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I had a question, then I just lost it. So go ahead.
Okay. Research in outside of Missouri, either Arkansas, Kansas, Oklahoma, Iowa, most memorable incident or occurrence?
Oh, geez. I'm gonna have to say Oklahoma for the spook light. And I didn't see the spook light, but I heard a shotgun go off at 2 o'clock in the morning. So that was pretty memorable. I got the hell out of there.
That's
That is fair.
that's fair.
Yeah, yeah. No, let me backtrack and go to Kansas. And I'm sure you guys know the Sally House. That's a pretty famous
Mhm.
place. I recommend this to anybody going to any place that has a haunted reputation. If you feel uncomfortable, leave. Just
Agreed.
leave. Because there are places that I've been comfortable, everything's fine, and I'll go back again, and my chest will get tight, and I'll start sweating, and my breath will get hard, and it's like the fight or flight hits me, and there's something wrong.
Mhm.
And I was going to go in the Sally House. I had an appointment, and I pulled up. I didn't even get fully out of my car. My foot was still inside my car, and I felt that heavy fight or flight, and there was no way in hell I was going to go into that house. I could go there right now. I mean, it's 45 minute drive, and I'd probably be fine. But at that moment, there was something that was telling me, don't go.
Mhm.
I think that's interesting because I do think that points to a very valid fact that a haunted location, it can be different at different times.
Right. Absolutely. It can. There's a place in north of Maryville called Workman Chapel. It's made the rounds on the internet as being really haunted. It is, but not for the reasons that are on the internet. But I've been out there 20 plus times. Cool thing about me going out there is I have permission, and most people who go out there don't. But only one time I went out there, and I got out of my car and everything was dead quiet. It was like I was in a vacuum. There was no wind. There were no coyotes out in the distance. It was at night. There were no bugs. There were no night birds. There was nothing. It was dead silent. It could have been a bobcat in the trees for all I know. And it probably was, but it could have been something else. And like I said, I just got out of there.
Yeah. Fair.
Lisa?
What effect do you think that the internet has had on people's perception of the paranormal?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. It has distorted it, really. Because there are so many people posting about so many things they've done, whether they've done them or not, who knows. The paranormal is not as sexy as people make it out to be. I mean, because how many times do you all go to some place to do an investigation and absolutely nothing happens? I mean, it's most of the time, I think. Ghosts are jerks. I mean, really? They don't come out all the time when you go out there. But according to everything people post on YouTube or TikTok or whatever they're doing, paranormal stuff happens all the time because that's how they see it on TV.
Right.
And it's not really how it is. The times when I go out places and something happens to me, I'm not looking for it. I'm going out there because I don't approach things as a ghost hunter. I approach things as more of a journalist. I interview people. I go to the spots where something paranormal supposedly happened. I document what it looks like, what it feels like, all these things. And if something happens, it happens, and that's rare, but it has happened to me. But I think, I think it's colored things differently. It's also not just from that aspect, but it has done a lot of bad things for people in general. And I'm specifically going to go with the story. I think you guys are going to probably definitely know this. The Slender Man stabbing that happened in Wisconsin a number of years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, the Slender Man was made up. It was completely fictional. And two girls who wanted to to run away and join Slender Man stabbed 12 times, stabbed a friend of theirs almost to death. It was lucky she survived. I mean, if it wasn't for the internet hype, that wouldn't have happened. So I mean, that's one of the bad things. Another bad thing is I mean, I don't have evidence. If I did, I'd be a lot wealthy. I'd be wealthy. I don't know. If I had evidence that putting energy toward a paranormal concept will create it, if I had evidence of that, that would be something really important. But that happens. I feel, it happens with tulpas. You
Exactly.
make something up in your mind, it appears. The Slender Man, there are people who've reported actually seeing it, and they're dead serious that they saw it. Well, people have been talking about it on the internet for so long. Some entity may be the Slender Man. It may be adopting that persona. It's the same with black-eyed kids. It's the same with shadow beings, shadow people. That we're putting so much energy toward that, we're actually making them happen.
I do think there is something to thought forms and tulpas. I agree. And I think it goes to just the energy to show that we have an effect on our environment.
Yep, we don't have to heat the planet up to show we have an effect on our environment.
True.
Yeah.
Jason, what's your favorite cryptid?
Oh, Bigfoot, man. Totally. Yeah, because actually, I'm going to take a little step back. I don't really consider this a cryptid because it lived until 1936, and people have reported seeing it a lot since then. So it's probably still alive. The thylacine in Australia, I think it's probably still around. But when it comes to a pure cryptid, man, Bigfoot, it has been seen, like I said earlier, in every state but Hawaii. It's been seen all across Canada. Hey, Central America, South America, Europe, including England, Russia, Africa, Australia, China. It's been seen all across the planet over centuries. All these eyewitness accounts can't be wrong. All the evidence that's been collected, especially, I think, the plaster cast footprints with dermal ridges. I think those are extremely important. You know, if that was taken at the scene of a crime, somebody would be put in jail with that evidence. So, man, I think Bigfoot's out there. Somebody's just got to hit him with a truck. I don't want to see him dead, a Bigfoot dead, but man, that's what it's going to take.
Hit him hard enough to stun him.
Yeah, well, in Oklahoma, there's open hunting season on Bigfoot, so maybe they'll collar one. Yeah,
that's true. They did pass that law.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Lisa?
I guess this might be a good point to do a shout out. Where can people find your books and get a hold of you?
Okay, to find my books, I mean they're on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and any place that sells books. I even saw that a number of them are at W.H. Smith's in England, so that was kind of cool. But my website, it's Jason Offutt, JASONOFFUTT.com. All my books are listed there. I also, post articles and short stories and updates. I also, my contact information's there. So yeah, get a hold of me. I'd love to hear from people.
And I encourage people to get Jason's books because they are extremely well written, and you can find something you're interested in because you write on a lot of different things.
And I want to say one of the books that I mentioned earlier about the 100-mile radius, all the paranormal things, it's called What Lurks Beyond. It's not in print anymore, but I still have some copies. So if anybody's interested in an autographed copy, just get a hold of me via my website and I'll get you taken care of. The very last chapter is about a mind-reading dog.
Who can resist that?
Nobody.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Those conclude my questions formal questions I have.
All right.
Well, throw a question out there, Josh, something that you're just interested in.
UFOs.
Oh my gosh. I was glued to the internet yesterday about the testimony in front of Congress, and it bothered me that lots of people aren't talking about it. However, it also bothered me that we had a whistleblower talking about things he hadn't actually seen. So, again, I was hoping for disclosure. Rug got pulled out, from underneath me. I just want from one day the President of the United States to stand with a piece of wreckage and say, there are extraterrestrial civilizations. That would make me really happy. I'm convinced there are. I mean, looking at the numbers, looking at the, statistically speaking, given all of the stars, all of the planets, there's got to be something out there. Carl Sagan said, I mean, he's not the original one who said this, but he's the one quoted for saying it. If we're the only civilization out there, what a tremendous waste of space. And that is so true.
It seems almost that there's just a trickle of information being dangled, and you wonder if that's intentional or if it's, a diversion tactic.
When I saw the New York Times in, was it 2019? 2017, it was a few years ago, when I saw them publish an article about the Tic Tac UFOs, I'm like, the New York Times is writing a serious story about UFOs. I thought this was going to be it, and it still might be, because I think it's honestly undeniable at this point. There are extraterrestrial civilizations. I mean, the universe is what, 14.5 billion years old? The Earth is 4.3 billion years old, I think. It would be sad to think that we haven't been visited by this point. And if we haven't, maybe it's because every other civilization started so early and they've already died off. I don't know, but there's got to be something. And another thing that annoys me is when science goes, well, we're so far away from the nearest star, it would take so long for a civilization to get here. No, that's using our science.
Right.
All right. A little over 100 years ago, the guy who ran, the Department of what word am I thinking of?
The patent office.
Patent office. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Said that nothing new will ever be. We've invented everything. Okay. And nothing new will ever be invented because we've already done it. If that can be said, that's the same thing as scientists saying they can't get here from there. Well, yeah, we just don't know how to do it. They do. So yeah, I'm convinced they've been here. Hell, they might be here right now. And if they are, I hope you're watching. Send me an email.
There's a number of UFO stories in our part of the country. What do you think is the most interesting event that's happened in this part of the country regarding UFOs?
I think it's probably the 1941 alleged UFO crash between Cape Girardeau and Sykeston. The famous account is a woman talking about her grandfather who was a preacher being called to deliver last rites on pilots of a craft, and when he went there, it wasn't an airplane and they weren't humans. But I had an interview with a woman named Linda Wallace a number of years ago who was just doing research on her father, who worked for the Army Air Corps back then, because it wasn't the Air Force. We didn't have the Air Force until 1947. It was the Army Air Corps, and there was a base down in South Missouri, and she went down there to research her dad. And this has been a number of years ago, but she talked with a number of people in rest homes who had served with her father, who all told her about the UFO crash. So she's convinced that it actually happened. And yeah, I mean, that would, the UFO crash, near Cape Girardeau would explain Rush Limbaugh, I guess. Yeah.
Potentially. Well, and then it's also not very far from Piedmont, which
1973, Piedmont. Oh my gosh! In the UFO flap of 73, there were so many sightings in Piedmont, Missouri. Yeah,
and really, that was, my understanding's right, that's really one of the first incidents that was seriously studied by researchers.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it ranks up there with the 1952, whenever the U.S. Capitol was buzzed by UFOs, and the no, the Los Angeles, the battle over Los Angeles, it's equal to those as as important.
Why do you think it's not talked about as much?
Yeah, Midwest, nobody pays attention to us. We're flyover country, for God's sake. Again, going back to my fiction, that's why I write everything here. I base everything here. Pay attention to us in the Midwest. We're important.
I like that, and that's a lot of our philosophy as well. Josh, you have anything?
Oh, Klingons or Romulans?
I've always been a Vulcan guy, so I'm more into Romulans. Although, yeah, Klingons get all the press, man. I just watched today's episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and of course there was a Klingon on it. Yeah.
Oh, Josh, why don't you answer that question?
Yeah.
Oh, Romulans. Romulans. Romulan Warbird.
I mean, it's well, Star Trek, the original series, the Balance of Terror episode with the Romulan Warbird, man, that's my all-time favorite.
I love that episode.
Yeah.
Really do. Really do. It's fantastic.
Yeah. It just it fascinates me how two cultures split, or one culture splits, and they go into completely different directions.
Yes.
So I love that dynamic.
I do too. I do too. Fantastic. I'm just putting this out there. We all need to be in the same place at the same time, not just on Zoom.
Right.
I agree.
That brewery you guys were talking about sounds good. So next time I'm down there, which I haven't been down there in a long time, I'll let you guys know.
Please do
that, and we can meet up, because definitely you would enjoy it. It's haunted, and good beer and food too.
All right, that's everything I like.
Well, we sure appreciate Jason. And is there anything that you want to add?
No, I'm just really happy that you guys had me on. I've had a great time tonight. I really appreciate the invite. It's, again, I said this earlier in the show, but it's been way too long since I've talked to you all.
Well, it really has, and we'll make sure it's not this long again. How's that?
All right. I appreciate it.
And we thank everybody, and we will see you next time.
All right.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, I'll see you guys later.